And I wanted to tell you, Volker and everybody, that Pamela did this really nice uh, compilation of comments from Ouspensky's Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution. It's only 3 pages, and she sent it to Claudia because of Claudia's questions about emotions versus, uh, feelings versus meaning, and it's really excellent, Pamela. And I hope I can just send it out to everybody in the meeting because I think everybody would enjoy it. And we're all at that point in the book when we've just been studying the breakdown of our setters. And Mr. Ouspensky has a lot to say about it, which is useful. So if that's okay, Pamela, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Absolutely. I'm having trouble with my computer. I may have to reload, but absolutely. I replied to your email, but you didn't have time to get to it.
Right. Well, I will send that out. It's good stuff.
Thanks. And the thing to remember about that is, it's not my words. What I did was I started in the very first page of the book, and I wrote down some notes, and then I went to the second page, wrote down some notes, and the third. I did the whole entire book like that because it jumps around in the book. And so what I
It
did was
does.
I put everything in, put everything down, then I categorized it all under the same category. And so what you see is the book concise. So that's what it is. I had a great time doing it. Then later, many years later, I went back in and put the page numbers so that people could go and refer to it. Anyway, I got to reload.
Yeah, it's really great, Pamela. So
Thank you.
I will send that out.
Thank
Um,
you.
and we have a very brief moment from Russ today explaining I wish to remember myself. And we could either start with that or with some best moments or questions. So up to you. Anybody have any questions or best moments to share?
I'm still
I have a
here.
question, but I'd like to see Russell's explanation of the exercise first.
Okay. And Deetha?
I'm still here. Is my best moment.
Well, me too. Tony, I have a question for you. You have never shared with us now that you are here, and I'm finding that that's a little difficult. That we don't know who you are, we have no email address for you, and this will be your last time. I will remove you from this if you do not either participate or send an email address or something so that we know what your intentions are in being here in this class. So I'm just giving you a heads up, Tony. You can be here for this one, but I would like to know who you are and why you're here. Okay, let's share. Okay.
Number 11 is I wish to remember myself. And you have to read about that one. The reason this is on at this position is these are the words we will use in April Fools. We'll do it a little different than you read about it in the book, but we'll use that. We'll use those words. When you read about it in the book, or just said, say the word I, and just see where center of gravity is. It could be in the moving center. Don't try and make it anywhere. Just see where it is in you, where your center of gravity is when you say I. Watch what happens in you when you say wish. When you say remember, he says there's supposed to be some barely perceptible reverberation in the solar plexus or the chest. And when a man says myself, he's referring to all of himself, including his atmosphere, as if different bells sound. I, one bell sounds, wish, a different bell sounds, to remember, a third bell sounds, and myself, the general bell goes off. That's the official exercise in the book. But we will use those words in a little slightly different form in the April Fool's exercise.
So that's all we have on that one. I will say that when we get to chapter 5 and get to the food diagram, uh, it becomes crystal clear that that is sort of the central teaching of Gurdjieff, that our job, as Jerry was saying last time, is the transformation of energies. And the first piece of that is to remember yourself. And if you've read that far in Ouspensky, you know that at the end of his life, he gave up. He said, I abandon the system. I cannot succeed in helping my students to remember themselves. They can't do it. He told his current leader of his students, Dr. Rolls, please find someone who can help my students to remember themselves, because this isn't working. And so we have to thank Russell for finding a way that we actually can be present to ourselves more and more and more with every breath. And that's the job. Then if we get that going and we're actually here, then we have the chance to transform our negative emotions and our reactions and to reach this possibility we have of being unbiased observers of this incredible world and see the laws that we've been learning about in action at greater and greater depths in ourselves. And that is such a privilege. I think Jerry is totally right that that is possible for us only due to the incredible efforts that hundreds of thousands of people have made over years that we breathe in with every breath that enable us to have this opportunity. So if you have any questions or best moments to share, if not, I'm going to go right into the next piece of oscillations. Okay then. Let's see, I think I will show myself too. All right. Let's see.
Pamela has her hand up.
Oh,
And so does Jerry.
go for it. Pamela,
Okay, I'll go first, Jerry.
ladies first.
Okay. I had a good experience in the fact that for years I know what reason is. I know what it represents. Dogs don't have reason. This is a good example. They have intelligence. They know when you pick up the dog bone box that it's dog bones, but they don't have reason in that they can't know that you get it at the grocery store. They may know the cupboard you keep it in, but they can't have that level of intelligence to say, oh, I can go to the grocery store and pick it up. So there's definitely a difference between intelligence and reason. This week, not getting into the specifics because of confidentiality, I was in a situation where two people were very disturbed about something, very, very disturbed. And one of them was a work student and the other one was not. So I was called in to kind of mediate or try to take care of the situation. So I did that part. And I realized in observing these two people, one having no concept of work on self at all, and the other one having a concept of work on self, but it didn't matter because they were both totally identified. They were completely identified in the circumstances and the situation. So it didn't matter if they were a student or not a student at that time. The person that was a student, I realized it was just so clear to watch this go down. The only thing that I could really do was just make sure neither one of them killed themselves or killed each other. But I was there and tried to be a calming force, tried to insert something that would be helpful when possible, not to insert myself at all unless it was necessary, and to try to keep them from raising their voices and to stay in a calm state as best as possible. Observing these people, I realized the one person is a very intelligent person, There's no doubt about it. Very intelligent. But they couldn't get in contact with their reason, in that they weren't able to put themselves in the place of the other person. They weren't able to consider the other person. They weren't able to take the eight position. And they were not willing to come off their stubbornness and their I'm right, you're wrong. And it was, I realized then it was so easy to see the stark difference of intelligence versus reason. They were still as always intelligent like they've always been or have been for years, but their reason was totally void. It just wasn't there, or they would not have responded and acted the way they did. Anyway, to make a long story short, it was just a great example of watching the difference between reason and intelligence. And so that was, I understand it even more than I did, even greater now. It has a deeper understanding and a better understanding. So that's awesome. Over. Thank you.
Great. Go, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, Pamela. And thanks, Rick, for bringing everyone's attention to this remarkable exercise. I wish to remember myself, which is more fully explained when you get to the April Fool's exercise. It's an incredibly important exercise. So they very much encourage people to investigate, explore it, and practice it. They I raised my hand because of I wish to remember myself. Of course, it's all about self-remembering, and the amount of confusion with regard to self-remembering is just off the charts. It's incredible, and it's taken me many years to sort of untangle all the confusion with regard to self-remembering. And the key to untangling the confusion is to realize that self-remembering is a relative to your level of being. A man number one has a self-remembering. If you ask a man number one who he is, he might say, "Oh well, I'm a factory worker," or I'm a carpenter. I'm a farm worker, right? His identity, or I'm a football player. His identity is going to be have to do with his a physical function. So that's the self-remembering of a of a man number one. A man number two is going to say, okay, well, I'm an artist, or I'm an actor, or I'm a caregiver, right? And that's going to be the self-remembering of a man number two. Man number three is going to say something like, I'm a doctor, I'm a scientist, I'm a philosopher. and that is going to be that a person's self-remembering. They when a person begins to have magnetic center moments, and those magnetic center moments begin to develop or become more frequent, and start to become the center of gravity. This gives them the self-remembering that I had for years, which is if people say, "Okay, so who are you?" Well, my this part of me would respond, I'm a seeker. I'm trying to, I'm on a quest. I'm trying to answer this question: what is the sense and significance of life in general, and particularly, what is the aim and purpose of my life, right? Okay. So that's the self-remembering of someone whose center of gravity is in their magnetic center moments. Now, if that person in the magnetic center moments finds a teaching and a practice, finds a 12-step program, finds religion, finds a spiritual teaching and practice, finds a really good therapist, they that person, if you ask them who they are, they might say, well, I'm a good neighbor. I'm a good father. I'm a good mother. I'm a good family man. I'm a good citizen, right? In the fourth way, they might say, "Oh, okay, I'm a good householder." Uh, and that's the self-remembering uh, of 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 a man, number four. They in the fourth way, almost all the descriptions of self-remembering have to do with this remembering of the good householder. It's the center of gravity is in the intellectual center, and it's based on the self-observation of the lower centers and the non-identification with the lower centers. But that's not the self-remembering of uh, that's not the self-remembering of a three-brain being. They there's no remembering in at that. There's no self. What's really was really shocking to me about April Fools, until that moment, there was no a real self to remember. They and the course of the exercise, the outcome of the exercise, I became aware of this other presence. Oh my God, there's two of me. Before that moment, there was never two of me. There was just one. There wasn't really a self to remember. And so the self remembering of a man, number five, is this remembering or this being present to this higher nature. You might conceive of it as the top do of the octave of who a person is. Oh my God! In the Christmas song, second thing I saw when I saw reality to natureness. Oh my God, I've got this lower nature, this animal nature that's taken billions of years to develop and it is incredibly uh, intricate and complicated. And also has a great deal of force and driving force in terms of survival and reproduction. Say, oh my God, they, I can see uh, uh, my animal nature. Okay. But now I'm present to what Russ referred to as the man angel, my angelic nature, my higher nature. Oh my God. There's two of me. There's an animal me and there's an angelic me, and then there's this whole octave in between, right? There's all these different stages levels of development. Uh, this octave between the bottom door of who I am and the top door of who I am. And it's that self-remembering that enables the food factory to begin to produce 16 out of the 18 substances it's capable of producing, whereas prior to that, the best functioning of the food factory could only produce 11 out of the 18 substances that this particular apparatus is capable of producing. So when you think about self, and then there's the self-remembering of someone who's awakened their higher mental center. And then there's the self-remembering of a person who has completed the octave of who they are. So try and keep this in mind when you think about self-remembering. It's relative to your level of being. Like Pam noticed in this confrontation between two people, they are the level of our self-remembering is really dependent on our state of I. Right. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Crystal clear, Jerry.
Claudia, I see you laughing.
I think it was really clear, precise, and very much true. And I thank you for the differentiation, for bringing words to this.
No, you're most welcome.
And yeah, I was always wondering of the difference of understanding of self-remembering, what people would talk about when the question came up.
Right.
So just telling stories, and well, this has nothing to do with it, and so that you just gave the answer. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions, best moments before we go to oscillations? Joel.
Ooh.
I do have a question, and it fits right in, I guess. So I've been wondering about oscillations and duality. So Jerry just brought this up, the duality, the man and the angel, the animal man and the angel man, which makes a lot of sense to me. My animal person is completely in charge about half the time. Well, more than half the time. Anyway, I see it, and every now and then I notice, oh, wait a minute, I have some good intentions every now and then. So I can definitely see a duality. So now that my question is about, do they just sort of randomly move around in there, or is there an oscillation going on there where one is in charge for, okay, you're in charge for the night shift, you're in charge for the afternoon, well, you're in charge tomorrow. I'll be in charge the day after. How I feel like I feel like there's a back and forth, and I'd like to think that it's not completely random. And I'd like to feel that, well, actually, the animal man has to be around someplace, almost all those lower centers. They can't disappear. They have to be there doing something. So, okay, so that's kind of the question. And the question I think of as I look at these oscilloscopes and sine waves and these scientific things that oscillate, and I don't even know what I mean by that, but I see day and night. Oh, there's a duality there. Well, okay, does the nighttime cause the daytime? Or is it just one passes and then because the earth rotates and then the other one is back? I don't really see them as like male and female with my wife and me. I hope that we're relating. So there's a duality, but a relation where if she says something, I'm smart enough to relate to it. So anyway, those are kind of my questions about the oscillation of the dualities. And I don't really think I'm got the whole thing with day and night or rainy season, dry season. I don't, I feel like they just happen, but really there should be some uh, each one causing and reacting to the others. That's kind of that's a little vague as a question, but that's what my brain is doing right now.
Okay, Jerry, your hand's up.
Yeah. So it's incredibly important to distinguish between duality and polarity. They're not the same. So when we talk about our two natures, we're not talking about our duality. We're actually talking about the polarity of who we are. They uh, 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 we're actually looking at a different diagram. On oscillations, the hmm, it's that duality is something that takes place within a polarity. So they and if you actually calculate the duality mathematically, a duality is actually half of an octave. But it's uh, because of the oscillation, it can create the semblance of a whole octave, but it isn't. Okay, it's one of the things that leads us. Well, the I'll just say to be able to differentiate between duality and and polarity. I'll give you an example. Okay, so the nucleus of an atom is the neutron and a proton. They're not opposites, right? Okay, they form the the nucleus of an atom, and the nucleus has a positive charge because of the proton, right? Okay, it has a plus charge. What completes the formation of the atom is the electron. It has a negative charge. So in polarity, you have this plus and minus that you don't have in the duality, which is the plus and the neutral. Okay. So it's a very, very important distinction to make Yeah, and it'll eliminate a tremendous amount of confusion if you try and distinguish between duality and polarity. In terms of the family, they the father and mother form the nucleus of family, right? And it's the children that they uh, um, it's mom and dad against the kids. So uh, uh, and so that's another example that might be helpful. Okay. So just remember that the duality is the positive plus the neutral, and the a polarity has to do actually with the three forces: the negative force, the positive force, and the neutral force.
Thank you, Jerry. Claudia, you had a question? No?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in if I understood Jerry right. And his examples, I got confused by his examples. But at the beginning, is it true to say polarity are two parts of one piece and duality are two different things?
Hmm.
No. Okay.
You want to answer that, Jerry? You want me to take a stab at it?
Go ahead, Rick.
The interesting thing about the oscillations is they can't be separated. Um, they are joined together by this meso interval of or area of coincidence. Uh, so they can be separated. You do have hydrogen that doesn't have a neutron, but every other element we've got, it is the neutron that makes it possible for the protons to stick together, right? And that's possible because they form a single whole when they're two oscillations within a duality. And if you think, for instance, of your instinctive center and your moving center, you couldn't possibly have a moving center without having the instinctive center first, which is why it's superior, right? You've got to have that before you can start moving. And you cannot separate the two. The moving center is totally dependent on the instinctive center, but the moving center, which is acquired, allows you to interact with the world and allows you to go out and get your food and to talk to other people and to find a mate and all of this great stuff that wasn't possible when you were just a plant and you had to stay in one place and all you could do was make oxygen and carbohydrates. And if you had a wish, which I think plants probably don't, it would be that eventually, because of that, some animals would come along and there would be a new stage, right? Polarity. I love your example, Jerry, of simplifying it down to the nucleus and the um, electrons. Things have to cool way down before you can get electrons. As long as it's hot, uh, the nuclei are moving too fast to grab the electrons. But as soon as things cool down enough, uh, the electrons glom on, and now what you have are the possibility of compounds. Now those elements can get together and they can make compounds and they can make organic compounds and eventually they can make tRNA and RNA and finally DNA, and you begin to get the possibility of ascending octaves. So the polarity does happen, but it happens a long time after in the evolution of the universe. The dualities are part of every octave, whereas you have to wait a while before you can get things cool enough to get organic compounds and so on. Did that help? No. Your shot, Jerry.
No, I that's so theoretical. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I do understand when you say we need the instinctual center before we are able to start moving with the movement. So there I can relate. But with all the rest, it's just I don't know anything about it. I just believe you, but it doesn't help me in my everyday life. It's
Well, take Jerry's other example of a family. It's nice just to have a partner to share your life with. That really does make a whole. But there's a whole new constellation of things that happen when you have children.
Yeah.
And it becomes so much richer, and suddenly you start learning all kinds of things you could never learn as it was just you and your wife. I mean, you're sort of these independent beings, and all of a sudden now you've got these little kids to take care of, and they put demands on you, and they force you to deal with the outside world, and they force you to interact with your neighbors, and the world just gets so much bigger because now you're not just the nucleus. Now you're a whole compound. And then you start having neighbors and relationships and communities, and that's how we wind up getting the herd animals eventually who are willing to sacrifice themselves for one another, because all of that helps survival. It's still driven by evolution, but it's become so much richer. And suddenly there becomes a possibility for the understanding of all this if we don't destroy our higher emotional center, which of course is also completely law conformable that we would. I don't know if that helped either.
Does a bit more. Thank you anyway. William
Loved your
has his hands
examples,
up.
Jerry. Yes. Will.
Yeah, this was something I ran across in Cosmic Secrets when I was listening to the tapes. I was talked about when the forces are separated, you have the 12, the 10, and the 8. But if the three of them together can cause resonate as a chord, and the chord can be as one. So if we could, develop ourselves to have three separated parts of ourselves to sound like a chord, we could actually be as one. I thought that was really interesting because they can't go back together, but they can resonate as one. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Then you can have something that moves forward because you have all three forces operating: the positive, the negative, and the neutral. Then you can have an enneagram. Then you can have an ascending octave. Okay. Yeah, you're ready for more theory, drawings, and all of that kind of great stuff that I love so much, and is part of what Russell had to teach us. Okay.
Can I just read?
Yep.
Sorry for interrupting.
You know
But
how eager I am.
what we just have been talking about very theoretically, and also William's reflection and all this, would you be able to put that into what no, I forgot your name, I'm sorry.
Jerry?
No. Paul.
Joel.
Oh, can't believe it.
We got
P,
Joel,
now
we got
you've just
William.
got P on your name.
Pamela.
Pamela. I was with Paula. Pamela. The example Pamela was telling us with these two people fighting with each other. Two forces standing in front of each other. And you said one was a student So having more, I don't know, abilities, capabilities of more, yeah, I don't know, being a student, knowing more about what was going on. And then Pamela going into the situation. So there were three different energies in this situation. Now, and that to me is really practical. This is what happens to us every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was going on in this situation? What was real in this situation?
That's exactly right. And the importance was the fact that I remained objective, meaning I wasn't identifying with anything either of the other two were. Now, if I hadn't been awake and hadn't been objective, I would have sided with one or the other. I probably, or may have, made the situation worse. It may have made the situation better, but more than likely worse, because once you side up with one of the other, then the other one's going to internal consider even more. So my role, they were not aware of my role because they're so involved in their identification at the time. When you're involved in identification, you do not see clearly. You only see your thing. So because they were both identified with the situation and I was not, I sat and remained very, very calm. I didn't contribute to the conversation unless it got out of hand, and then I would just simply say something like, "Okay, let's keep our cool, or let's try to think of the other person." You know, I'd say something that would neutralize the situation. So with my presence being there and not being identified in any direction and being totally neutral, those emanations somehow, even though I couldn't repair the entire situation, at least it kept it from escalating out of hand. At least it was able to do that. So that was better than things getting worse or somebody becoming so identified that they hurt somebody else, or they, it could have gone in a really bad way easily. You see it all the time on the news and out in the world. But by remaining calm, then that they felt heard. They felt like they were getting heard, and they, eventually came to some sort of. They didn't resolve the situation, but at least they came to something that was doable, and so that was good. So my force was to remain neutral and to remain as calm as possible to hopefully keep it from getting out of hand, which is, that's what we did. That's how we did that. So there you go. Jerry?
Okay. Thank you, Pamela.
Thanks, Pam. And I thought I would sort of piggyback on what you were saying with my experience in prison. They a very intense, negative environment, and the correctional officers, they with the responsibility of maintaining order, have a very difficult job. It's scary. And the correctional officers that are scared or are fearful in any sort of confrontation, invariably their reaction always escalates the tension, right? Because they knocking heads and using force to resolve the situation. But the really skilled correctional officers, and I witnessed this time and time again, and it was awesome. They had the ability that you were talking about staying calm, cool, and collected, and neutral, And it was just amazing to see how their presence de-escalated the situation. Exactly what you're talking about. So they I hope these are practical examples for you, Claudia, because they I apply this all the time to my own inner world, in which I have uh, um, inner conflicts, right? And because of the work, I can go. I can notice what's going on inside of me. I can notice the reactions going on and inside of me. That it begins with noticing, and then I can go, okay, not I. What Pam was referring to. If I become identified with one of those reactions, well, then I'm off for a joyride. You know, my mechanical nature is going to take me to interesting places that, as I get 80 years old and look back at all those things, are relatively embarrassing. They so they I have this nature which lock conformably. This is one of the beautiful things about these ideas, is that we live in a universe of separated forces. It was intentional. Uh, it was created this way, right? It's not because there's something wrong with us, right? We were actually created uh, in a universe in which the three forces are separated, but because we have these three brains, then we have the ability to find this neutral place in ourselves, right? Okay. And that neutral place in ourselves is they. I'll go back to what Will Murray was referring to. It's that neutral place in ourselves that enables the three forces to become united, right? And whatever the conflict is can be resolved. It can be resolved uh, through compromise. It can be uh, resolved in simply agreeing to coexist, or it can be resolved simply by capitulating. It's like, you know what? Yeah, I don't really care if we watch Vera. Uh, that, that's fine. Or, they uh, it's this neutral place where we can experience the freedom of choice that we talk about, right? When we talk about free will, it's this neutral place in us that enables us to respond as opposed to react, right?
This was very helpful, Jared. Thank you.
Yeah, I did want to add one more or a couple of more factors. And Deetha, I'm sorry if I'm
Oh,
if
no,
I'm
go ahead, honey.
okay. The thing that I had to do also is I had to be present. I had to be present and neutral in that they were very upset. And if I had said anything in any direction that favored one or the other, then the other one was just going to lose it even more. So before speaking, I would have to stop and think, okay, what's the best thing to say here to keep it neutral? Of course, I could see the ridiculousness of both of them. They were both being ridiculous about some goofy thing that really should not have been blown out of proportion like it was. It was just ridiculous. There was a lot of a room for compromise and a lot of room for making adjustments to where everybody would have been happy. But you can't make that occur when people are identified. I mean, they get even madder. And then there was even times when I would say something neutral, truly neutral, and they would twist what I say and say, well, what do you mean by that? I didn't do that. You know, it went through their false personality, their interpretation, and they perceived it a different way than I was saying it, and they completely twisted what I said. So you'd have to back up and get that going in a different direction. And the only reason why that they didn't even come to a resolution was the fact that they were so stubborn, and they were, by golly, they were going to be the ones that were right, and I'm not going to give in to that person. I'm just not going to do it. So, you know, eventually you do everything you can, and then you go, you know what? I tell you what, you all think about it, try to consider each other, and call me in a few days and we'll get together and I'll be the mediator and let's talk it out together. Of course, that has not happened yet because that means that they will have to give in. So that's okay, but at least I got out of it gracefully and I could come back home and get my coffee.
And nobody's
and they
killed
didn't
yet.
kill each other. So, I mean, I had done everything I knew that was possible in the circumstances. I wasn't going to fix the situation because they were too identified with it at the time. And so, you know, you just let it go and whatever happens, happens. And I was just a good sounding board. And so there's that. Thanks, Deetha.
Oh, well, my reaction is a little off field to what was said. But Jerry, when you said that we were created this way, da 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 da. And what came up for me when you said that was that we evolved from the bottom up to eventually being created, but be evolved into being three brain beings capable of evolving past. And we're the first ones that could possibly do that. But I remember, I think Russell saying that if we fail at this, then somebody else will be brought up, will evolve far enough that maybe they can complete the octave. But for me, it's significant because otherwise I fall into God created us in 7 days and we did, you know, we are so special and all this. We are special in that we evolved and got lucky enough to be a conglomerate of all the lower stuff into something capable of evolving further and giving a return to our common father. Just a thought. I'm all done.
Yeah, and take into consideration, Deetha, that every brain is a little, in other words, the instinctive brain was made first, it's the oldest, then the moving center, it's not as old, et cetera, et cetera. So our reasoning is a very young brain compared to the original set of DNA.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't had enough time to develop even further and more, which hopefully in a few hundred years, thousands of years, millions of years, it'll work better.
Well,
Thanks,
identification is a terrible thing.
Oh, it is. And
once
it takes
you're identified, you can't get out of it unless you want to get out of it.
Exactly. You have to really want to work on yourself. And yeah, it grabs you and you're in it. Sorry, Jerry, I interfered there. I just sort of jumped in there.
Oh, you never have to apologize to me, Pam. So the these ideas are just so incredibly wonderful. To use Pam's analogy, it really enables people to reason. Mm-hmm. So when one of the really startling statements in the Fourth Way by Gurdjieff, and one of the most helpful when you begin to realize the truth of it, is that humanity is third force blind. and actually evolution is not capable of the third force. They and until it reaches the note law, and that's the extent to which things can evolve mechanically, right? So when you look at the world of nature, what do you see? You uh, you see a jungle, right? Uh, and and the struggle for survival, predator and prey, right? Okay, because there's only two forces, right? There isn't within the species itself. There isn't the neutralizing force comes from outside. And so nature up to the note law is characterized by this incredible struggle for survival, right? Eat and be eaten thing. And that's our lower nature. That I mean, that's our bottom dough. And when you look at the octave of organic life, humanity is the organism intended to occupy the Lati interval, right? And the name of all the intervals have names, and the name of the Lati interval is the intentionally actualized results of a neutralizing force. Oh my God. The humanity is created to be the bearer of the neutralizing force in the octave of organic life. Wow. They and so they uh, uh, and we only enter that it's only higher our higher story or our third body that it is actually capable of being present to this neutralizing force. It's actually a place in ourselves that can genuinely be neutral, can generally be like Pam was trying to in helping her friend attempting to be a reconciling force, right? They and they but as long as we're trapped in the bottom story of who we are, they it we can imitate this new neutrality, but to really be able to generate it, they the that that a third story in us, it's necessary for that to be awakened. Because until then, we don't really have that higher presence in us that is able to blend with the lower presence in us to create this neutral presence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the lower can't blend with the higher until the higher is present, and the higher isn't present until that third story is awakened, and then we can experience a real second story. Okay, it goes 1 to 3 to 2. It doesn't go 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jerry. Great point.
Well, we've gone far afield, but it's been wonderful. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you for the great questions, Claudia and Joel and Will. And now for something totally different.
You're actually going to get to study the book?
Yeah. I kind of keep insisting on that. So I'm sorry we're going to lose Stephen, but no problem. And I wanted to pass on that I did hear, this is why I was quiet for a little bit also, from Tony, who is at work and cannot participate because he's at work, but he did give me his email. I will include him, and so he is recording these.
Oh,
That's
good.
wonderful. Wonderful.
So he is not just a lurker, he is actually interested in this material and has told me who he is. This is Anthony
Tony's
Usher.
last name? What's
Usher.
Tony's last name? Usher. Oh,
Usher.
yes. He's been around for years.
So
that's wonderful.
So yeah, he's been around. Now we know who he is. He's not a ghost. So
no, I'm
not
glad
a
he's here.
strange black lurking presence. He is really welcome. So I wanted you to know that because
thank you.
Yeah, particularly Nadir was concerned that there was this person who was just a dot for a long time, and the dot eventually went away and became, I think it may have become Tony, or else they're different. But now we can actually welcome Tony Usher, who can't be here during the period because he's working, but he's interested. So, a real person. All right, here we go. Trouble on wheels.
No.
Yes. Oh, and there's my sweetie. Her name's Pat. Okay. What are we going to look at? Let's look at a number of things. This is what Russell had us draw. This is a page out of Cosmic Secrets, right? So when Russell got to this chapter 4, he gave us the mathematics of the duality. And he had us draw in these oscillations. And he later made pictures which he put on his wall, and he used blue for the major and green for the minor. And because these are not to scale, they look like they're the same, but you can see the minor is only going up from 64 down to 32, whereas the major is going from 64 up to 128. So it's actually twice the width in frequency, if you will. So if we continue along, he starts talking about the fact that there is this something, that this so goes up here 2/3 and down 1/3. Well, what is he talking about? He's talking about the range. So it's really important to separate the idea of the range from the oscillation. So this so is what he calls an oscillating do. It can go all the way up to doubling at 92. And remember, we can only talk about things doubling when we are looking at things that double and halve. So in scale 1, this is scale 0 we're looking at here. But scale 1, there's a do, and the do lives at the same frequency, 96, as the so in the scale 0. So this is why you notice he's doing this thing where he keeps scale 1 as the caps and scale 0 as the caps bold. This is to help us keep track of all these different scales, which is otherwise very confusing. So it's important that you go back and remember that he's got this way of tracking these different scales. So scale 1 is a musical scale, a mathematical scale. It doubles and it halves. And so we can only talk about these oscillations when we're talking about the oscillating does in scale 1. But the interesting thing about any octave, it's such a simple mathematical model, is that we can turn any octave into a scale 0. You just subtract the top do here from the bottom do from the top do, and subtract all these numbers, and this would become a 0, and that would become a 96, and now it is a scale 0. And once it's a scale 0, you can have a scale 1 over here, and it will have oscillations, right? It will have a so that oscillates, and it will have a do that oscillates. So the so and do exist in scale 0. The oscillating does always exist in scale 1. And when we get to chapter 6 and look at the outer octaves, they are always, 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 always scale 1 octaves. So you have to remember whenever you want to talk about octaves interacting as assisting octaves and so on, you're talking about scale 1 octaves. So in order to understand what you're doing, it's important to keep the scales separate. So what's he talking about here? He's saying this so can go up 2/3 and down 1/3. Well, what does he mean by that? Okay, it goes down to me, goes down 48, and it goes up 96. So this is 2/3 of its entire range, and this is 1/3 of its entire range. So it's going down 1/3, so he says it's a -3rd, and it's going up 2/3, and that's why he calls it plus 2/3. So it's plus 2/3 of its entire possible oscillating range, right? And he's got the same thing going for the me. It can go up from 48 to 96, which is 2/3 of its total range from 24 to 96. So its range goes 24 to 48 to 96. So when it goes down 24, and it can go up 96, 2/3 of its range and minus 1/3 of its range. So what? Nobody else ever noticed this. Why did Russell notice this? Well, Russell's lucky. He has a mind that makes these kind of incredible jumps. And he lived in a time when people were talking about atoms being made, both neutrons and protons, out of quarks. And quarks had these strange fractional charges. And you never ever see a quark, right? Not ever. No one's ever seen a quark. You only see these oscillating does. You see neutrals. This is your minor oscillation. You see the positive. This has a positive. Why does it have a positive? Because if you look at the total of these pieces when it's tied together, this one is connected with plus 2/3, plus 2/3, minus 1/3. So when you look at this, that adds up to a positive 1. And if you look at this, it's plus 2/3, but it's got a minus 2/3, minus 1/3, excuse me, from the so up here. It's the same one as this one, right? And minus 1/3 from the me. So it adds up to actually 0. So this is our neutron, and this is our proton. Now, who but Russell Smith would have noticed that this strange oscillating do business that he came up with happened to match up with quarks? But he did. And he noticed that what happens in this situation is that you never see the quarks because these things are bound together. You don't see these pieces as separate pieces. You see them as bound together. And so when you got oscillations going on, each so oscillates up to a fa and down to a fa, and the me oscillates up to a me and down to a me. The oscillations are separate. This is a neutron, this is a proton. They are different things, and they can be separated. But the fact that they are composed at the next scale down of these quarks, those can't be pulled out. And that sort of explains how this duality of the two of them is held together. And I'll just give you a real brief little picture of it. Okay? So Joel said, well, how do you tie up here? Here's the duality called daytime and nighttime. All right, so here you are. This is daytime out here. Actually, this is the whole day and night cycling as the Earth turns. This is your 16 hours of waking and your 8 hours of sleep. So when this thing goes, you can show it. Here's our clock going around, right? And here you are asleep, and now you wake up. It's about 6 a.m. and you go about your day, and you're approaching noon, and you eat, and you go on, and now it's getting on to evening, and you're still awake, and you come on back, and you're still in the waking oscillation, and you get along, and here it is. When you get to here, it's about 10 o'clock, and you go to bed, and then you go to sleep. And this oscillation begins. And so this is sort of one way to picture how these oscillations are tied together by the circulation of the me-so, right? Now, Joel asked, well, I don't see any similarity between that and me and my wife. And that's why we got to say this is such a very abstract idea. There are no other ideas that I know of in human history that will, on the one hand, combine sleeping and waking, and on the other hand, a man and a woman. And yet, what you've got here is, we'll just stop it. What you've got here is, this is the range of the minor oscillation. The hollow black is the range of the major, right? And Russell chose those colors because these are red suits. This is the given. If we don't get sleep, we don't ever have the energy to do the waking, right? But the waking is what determines what goes on in our life more, just like the proton is determined how that atom is going to interact with other atoms. But it never gets to exist as an atom if it's not held together with its other protons, except for hydrogen, by its neutrons. So it's a structural containment, and there's glue here. So if you form a relationship with someone and you marry and decide you're going to do a thing together, there's all kinds of interactions that happen here, and it's not as simple as waking and sleeping, but you can believe that there's glue, right? And if you don't manage to keep this alive, you'll split.
Yeah, and I would like to throw in here, sometimes when it comes to relationships and couples, you sometimes you take the major role and sometimes you take the minor role.
Yeah.
When it came to cooking, for instance, I was the one that made sure we had all our meals, except don't let Russell cook, whatever you do. He was good at getting cereal together and toast. But when it came to breakfast foods, eggs, he was the major oscillation and I was the minor oscillation because he could really cook eggs. He was the one that was primo in the kitchen when it came to eggs. So we switched off minors and major oscillations depending on what was happening at the time and who did a better job at that, this, that, and the other with different things.
Right.
So to be able to navigate through that and to adjust your roles is really fun and cool. And there's some couples that they're not going to be able to do that. They're not willing to do that, but that's how it should work.
Yeah. And Russell did talk about people who were gay, whether they were men or women living together, you still have these roles that you've got to share. Someone's got to take the lead in something, and someone's got to take the lead in the other. And it really is not gender related unless someone is bearing children, in which case, yeah, duh, it is. Yeah, Jerry. You're muted, Jerry.
Uh, yeah, love your animation. That's wonderful. So it occurred to me when you're going through that, the sleep and waking cycles are pretty easy to see. But when you talk about man and woman, they or a wife and husband, uh, the and what occurred to me is that for most of the history of humanity, the relationship between a husband and wife, the traditional relationship was that the wife's domain was the home, and the man's domain was going out into the world, right? Uh, and so when you look at that duality and the oscillation of that duality, uh, and instead of sleep and awakening, I put home and the world, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
essence and personality, right? Is two other terms that Russ used for the duality. Then you can see that same kind of oscillation taking place, right? So um, and so
Yeah. Okay, here we go again.
Yeah,
Unless
and
there's
like
other
for instance,
questions.
with Russ and I, we had an agreement. It was understood between two of us. We didn't come to the agreement; it was just understood. When he had students, he was not required to participate in anything that had to do with household or yard. It was just you concentrate on the students. I'll take care of everything else. But when he didn't have students, and I'm at work because I worked a full time job, and then came home and did all the other stuff too. But when he didn't have students, he helped around the house. He would vacuum, he would wash clothes. You know, he was a very good householder when it came to that kind of stuff. So we interchanged our roles often depending on the circumstances. And it was we had a joyful time doing it because it was helping each other and helping the situation in the school. Over.
Well, that's a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that. That he was a house husband.
He was, and I'll tell you a really quick story because I know you want to get back to the book real fast, but I'll be real fast. So there was, I learned about the level of tolerance one time when he was we didn't have a student at the time, and there was a few years that we had students all the time. So when we didn't have a student, it was really, wow, we don't have a student. So there was a couple of weeks that we didn't have a student, and he was in charge of her going to wash the clothes. Well, Pamela, when the clothes got up so high, you know, like a half a basket full, I would go do a load and keep the clothes going. Well, he was going to do the clothes this particular week, and I came home and I saw the clothes and nothing happened. They hadn't been washed, and I came home 2 or 3 days later and still there's clothes that there hadn't been washed. And then they got to the top of the basket, and then they started coming over the basket. And so I didn't say anything through all these days. And finally, I said something in I think it was the fourth or fifth day when the clothes are starting to hang over, and I said, "Honey, were you going to wash the clothes this week?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay." I said, "This week?" Because there's a lot of clothes in there. He said, "Yes, it's just a proof of tolerance level, honey. You have the tolerance level of half a basket, and I have the tolerance level of over the basket." And I said, "Oh, okay." It was really fun. So I learned about tolerance levels.
Yeah, my wife and I have different tolerance levels for mess. Okay, back again to what we were going to look at. We've got a few minutes left. Let's see, we can shrink this one. I'm going to shrink that one. I'm going to go to our picture here. So I'm reminding you that when we're talking about oscillations, you can actually look at this scale below scale 1, right? There's a do here that's oscillating between fas. But if you subtract 48 from everything, you'll see that we reach a new home for an octave. And this is the home of the oscillation. It's at 0 here. This is if these things stopped bouncing back and forth, it would come to a rest right in the middle, right? And then when you set it boinking, it'll go up and down because there's a force here that stops it and a force here that stops it. And so this is what Russell called the fourth home of an octave. But it's not an octave like any of the other octaves because it doesn't go up 3, 3, 2, 4, 4, 5, 3. It goes fa to so, which is 4, so to la, which is 4. Then it goes up la to ti, which is 5, and then it goes up ti to do, which is 3. It goes up a total of 16, and then it goes up 6 and 6 and 4, another 16. But it's a different sequence. So it's not an octave like these other octaves that start at a do. This is an octave that starts at a fa and goes to a fa that's one octave up. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're playing with the different scales of things. So this is just a reminder. We looked at this already. A minor oscillation is the genesis of a new, whether it's a female giving birth or the neutron holding new elements together that never existed before. And the major oscillations are doing the relationship with the outside world, determining what that element is going to be. But they all repel each other. Without the minor oscillations, you don't get any new elements. And they must compete. You remember Russell's story of the female bird cheeping for the male to bring her some food, please, because she's not going to just go with anybody. She's got to find someone who, when she's stuck sitting on the nest, is going to take care of her and the new kids. So minor oscillation is superior because it's responsible for repair, nourishment, nurturing, the healing powers of sleep and rest, the pause before the push. So there's a whole aspect of this neutral, reconciling force that's important. And then there's the duality as a whole. Now, we could look at this again. There's the cards diagram video where you saw that the cards are originally, as Russell shows in chapter 3, all on the notes. And they step down to being on the oscillations when they come into existence in this world of opposites and oscillations. Does anyone want to see that again and discuss how that gives you something new? Namely, it gives you that when you go from a given, like the instinctive center, I don't mean the 2 of diamonds and the 10 of clubs. That's totally wrong. I mean the 10 of diamonds and the 2 of clubs. Sorry about that. When you get to control of the instinctive center, when you can tell your right from your left, you're ready to have a flagellum, right? You're ready to be able to move. When you have control of instinctive center, you're able to move. When you have control of your emotions, and got it wrong again. This is the 10. I make mistakes all the time. So.
And quick question, Rick.
Yeah.
What is your, after the word humans, you have 15.41 and 18.0?
Okay. These are places in, if we show this card diagram video where I can stop and show you what's happening without listening to me or Gary going on and on and on, and just show you where they are. So the most important thing to take out of this, do you want to see that again, or do we want to move on? This is where we're going next. Okay. Well, that'll be what we'll do then. All right, we'll shrink this. we will go to this reading class, and it is card diagrams on the oscillations.
This re-examination of the card diagram begins with
Okay,
Russell's
we're going to
cards actual.
pause it. Russell wanted to start with this picture, by the way, because this is how we first visualized the cards, right? And things are a little fuzzy because it was a low resolution image, but you recall that these three things are that grouped together so that you'll have the essence here, the given setters here, and here you have the acquired setters. And so this ace is shown big because that's the whole setter, and the jack, queen, and king are those parts of setters, and so they're shown smaller. And then the smaller cards, this is the re, mi, fa, the parts of the jack. So like in humans, this would be your heartbeat and your hair growing and all your automatic stuff. This would be drawn attention in the jack. So maybe you get a bit of stuff in your eye and you blink, and I'll send you Pamela's stuff from Ouspensky on this. He's got a lot of good stuff here. But you're aware of blinking, but it happens automatically. Whereas here you've got something in your eye and you're blinking intentionally to get rid of it, right? And then there's the 5 and the 6 and the 7 as the parts of the queen. Now the queen is drawn attention, and the king is in actual paying attention. So in the instinctive center here, this is when you're bringing your attention to your feet and you're really becoming aware. And here's where you're like so aware that you can feel exactly. Maybe you can even control your heartbeat if you have a king of diamonds operating here. And then we go into the moving center. Well, these two are going to group as a duality. So when you begin to have control in this center, and that's now control in the whole center, but it first shows up as the 9 and the 10 of diamonds, that means now you can begin, like you imagine the fawn is able to get its feet under itself and stand up. And that has to happen pretty fast or it's going to get eaten. And so you have the development of the parts of the moving center and then the emotional center. So if we move along through this, Russell says, okay, we'll spread them out into a single long line here. And we're going to talk about human beings, so we're going to talk about this is us. We're in the La-T interval, or at least we should be in the La-T interval. And here's our scale 0. So Do is our birth, and I show it as this little dot because you're not actually born until Re. This period here is probably largely gestation, or at least maybe you're born earlier, and this is when you're a baby, you can't do much. But at Re, you begin to have your own existence as a person. Now this me, this oscillation here at me, you remember that's a Do that actually is existing here. This is a Re. And so this Do is able to oscillate to a Fa. Remember, Fa's become Fa's, so this is a Fa, and that's at this Fa, and this thing oscillates from here to there, to this Fa. Fa is where all of these oscillations split, right? They split at a Fa. And so this is the oscillating Do, and it's going from this Fa to this Fa. And that's basically your childhood happening here, right? And here from your Fa through the La, the So La, you remember that's your what's going on in your own major oscillation of career from Fa to La. And that's sort of when you're this independent person, and here's the person who's coming up to Fa. And if this is like an 80-year-old life, this is at 1/3 of your 80-year-old life, which is 26 or something. So up to here, you're sort of learning the ropes, and up here, you've decided, if you were in medieval times at least, you were an apprentice up to here, and here's where you start becoming your journeyman, or in Russell's story, you become the hunter, right? You decide, I'm going to be a hunter, not a tent maker. So that takes you down to scale 1. Well, and this is still all centers on the notes. So we move along here. Come on, change. It's not changing. I don't understand why. Okay. There we go. Let's move it back a little. Okay. Here we are. We've actually labeled the notes with the cards, right? So this is what you get in Russell's chapter 3. These are the cards. The instinctive center is the ace of diamonds, the moving center, the ace of clubs, the emotional center, ace of hearts, intellectual center, ace of spades. The extra joker, which we, before we could count on an objective exercise, only you had to be really lucky to have any other thing with the higher emotional center except flashes, those magnetic center moments. And developing the higher intellectual, that actually requires that this higher emotional has to step down and become part of the higher intellectual. Notice again, the higher intellectual is entirely dependent on the extra joker. You don't have this functioning until you have 2/3. Remember the 2/3. You have to have a pretty clean intellectual center, cleaned out of its biases here. And you have to have an emotional center that's willing to be free of bias and to become subordinate to an aspect of yourself that can see truth and be unbiased. For these two to actually form a 2/3 part and allow this thing to really function. So this is his picture of our centers on the notes. But he says that isn't really the way it is. The way it is, I'm going to shut this up so you don't have to hear me over me. As Russell said, it's the interesting thing about this picture is that this same pattern will appear if you move everything down 2 scales. And when you move these card labels down 2 scales onto the oscillations, you now know something brand new that you didn't know before. Namely, you know that they are formed in dualities. As this ace of diamonds moves down and becomes a minor oscillation, you see that this is a whole story in and of itself, that this is the story of us as a physical being with an instinctive center and a moving center. And this is the story in which we become, let's stop that for a second. Whoops. Oops, sorry. Get back to where we were. That's why I had the times marked, Pamela, so I could find where I was. Because it's tight.
Yeah, I get it. I'm laughing. Hey, I don't know who gets your computer when you die, but make sure you keep all this stuff.
All of this stuff is actually up in the cloud, and it's also on Didier's thumb drive that he passed out.
Yeah.
So why am I scoping in here? What happens when these move down? What Russell says is we've got this lower story, and it's all about the bodies, right? And then we have the possibility here of actually having an emotional center. And those all have parts. And if we go breaking it down, you can see how those parts break down. And since it's all to scale, you can see, okay, this half of this oscillation is where the queen of diamonds is. And here's the jack of diamonds. down there below, and here is the King of Diamonds up at the Fa. Those three parts form this center. So what Russell has created here is a mathematical structure that tells us exactly how we're built. And not only does it tell us how we're built, it says if you don't have the King of Diamonds, you're not going to be able to develop. If you don't, well, actually, you don't need the whole King of Diamonds. You just need a certain amount of control. You need 2/3 maybe, but you definitely need the Jack in order to begin to move in your moving center. If you have full control of this center and the King of Diamonds, you're going to be quite something, just like the King of Clubs here. That's what an athlete can do. Someone who can leap up and catch that football where he knew it would be even before he leapt. I mean, that's phenomenal, right? But that's a possibility that exists because this structure makes it possible. So if we look and we keep going smaller and smaller, and we look at it here, this is down here where we see, and see, is it still moving? I think it's still moving. I'm going to pause it again. Where is pause? I guess it's paused. So this is where evolution happens. This is the Two of Diamonds, is the beginning of the evolution of organic life, right? So this is not just the human scale. This is just as the periodic table existed before we had all these elements. What Russell is saying is that this pattern existed before we had DNA. But when DNA came about, it could survive and reproduce itself. And as it worked its way up through these oscillation dualities, when you would get to a place like the 10 of Diamonds and the 2 of Clubs, that's when you would get flagella happening. And you get, here you have the Venus flytrap happening when it begins to get motion even as a plant, right? There's the flagellum happening and the trilobites. And this is sort of the pattern of evolution happening. And what we have here is, okay, by the time we're getting up here to fairly advanced reptiles, they start taking care of their eggs, or they even take care of their babies a little bit. But we've got this big gap before we get to having an emotional center. And you remember Jerry took you last time through an ascending octave that actually helps us cover that gap. And that's the ascending octave of meaning, the astral octave. And when meaning happens, then what you're having here, and I guess, there we go. Have to, sorry, it's troublesome. When we have the meaning happen, you begin to get critters that take care of their young, and there's a meaning to that, right? They now have a beginnings of an emotional center. And then you have people, little animals in here being carried. There's definitely an emotional quality there. And then finally you have the herd animals who will care for each other, and then the spillage of human beings, and the development of an intellectual center here where birds remember where they're going, and elephants remember where they are and where their group is, and chimpanzees have quite amazing brains. And at some point we got human beings. And then they got this higher emotional center and developed reason. They started having reason up here, and they made the world safe, and they lost it, which is, I love that Russell says, hey, this is law conformable. There's no original sin here. We didn't fuck up. Any three-brained being would make the world safe for its children. And pretty soon those children wouldn't have to develop their lower centers. They wouldn't know that they have to have their lower centers active in order to have conscience. And so they would definitely be losing this extra joker here and falling back to being not even as loyal as dogs. So that's the pattern of evolution, which only is going to take us up to here somewhere. And here's somebody who's incredibly brilliant, but they don't make it up into this. This is the area of two-naturedness we were talking about. This is where you actually have this steward as a possibility of something separate from the animal, right? That's this whole half of the octave. From here on up, that's half this length. And we don't get there unless we're very lucky or we run into Russell, because these lower centers have to unify. And even Gurdjieff didn't know that. He thought the Ace of Spades was involved, the intellectual center. But you could see if this pattern is right, which we have every reason to believe it is, because it predicts not only this, but the periodic table and a lot of other things like the structure of the atomic model, right? The quarks. It's only formed from these three lowers. And what the Ace of Spades has to do is get out of the way, shut up, and let these three exhaust themselves and unify. So, to me, this is an incredible map, and it tells you more than the cards on the notes do, because it gives you all this information about the dualities that are tied together. And I've run over, so I'm going to stop.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It takes a lot of repeating. It really does. This stuff
It
is
does.
dense. And you should not feel that, oh my God, this is too much, because it's not too much. It's just complicated. And it's got a lot of pieces. And it's all brand new. You've never seen anything like this until Russell. So, and it's so abstract. Where else are you going to find men and women grouped together with quarks, huh? You won't.
Well,
Okay.
the explanation of the world should be complex.
It should. It has to be complex. And yet,
because it is complex.
It is complex, but the model is simple.
That's true. That's what he was so amazing in that.
Indeed.
Right. And we can grasp it because it is simple.
Well,
we don't have to understand quantum theory.
Exactly.
I can grasp it because you helped me see it.
Well, actually, Russell helped you see it. I'm just nailing a few extra nails in. Okay, thanks everybody. Another wonderful session.
Thank you.
We will make it through this book eventually.
Thank you, Jerry.
Oh yeah, we'll be here at Christmas, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. It takes some time.
Bye, Claudia.
Bye.
Bye, Veronica.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Adios.
Adios, Israel. Adios, Tony. Tony Usher. We know who you are now. Thank you. Bye, all. Good to see you, Veronica. Thanks for being visible. That was great. Glad you could make it.
Thank you very much.
You'll have to adjust your camera so we can see more than the top half of your head.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.